Thank you, Carrie. Hello, everyone. This is Greg Anderson. I'm the president of DirectWorks. Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. Earlier this year, Supply Chain Insights conducted a survey of discrete manufacturers. The objective of the survey was to understand the current state of direct material sourcing and supplier management technologies in the discrete manufacturing industries. Specifically, Supply Chain Insights wanted to take a closer look at how supply chain leaders source and manage direct materials, while also examining how these processes can be improved. DirectWorks felt that the results of the survey would be very relevant to the industries we serve, and we're putting on this webinar with Supply Chain Insights. Today you'll be presented with some of the key findings from the survey by Laura Cesari, the founder of Supply Chain Insights. Following Laura's presentation, I'll be sharing DirectWorks' perspectives on a significant shift that's happening in manufacturer-supplier relationships and explain why we believe your approaches to supplier engagement have to change to win in the market today. There will be time for questions at the conclusion of the presentations, and you can submit questions through the Q&A box on the WebEx application. We'll be keeping track of those. So now I'd like to turn it over to our featured speaker. I'm going to make an introduction here first before I hand it over. Sorry about that. Laura Cesari is the founder of Supply Chain Insights, a research firm focused on delivering independent, actionable, and objective advice for supply chain leaders. Laura is widely recognized as a thought leader and has 40 years of diverse supply chain experience. Prior to founding her own firm, she spent 9 years as an industry analyst with Gartner Group, AMR Research, and Altimeter Group. Prior to becoming a supply chain analyst, she spent 15 years as a leader in the building of supply chain software at Manugistics and Descartes Systems, and 20 years prior to that as a supply chain practitioner at Procter & Gamble, Kraft General Foods, Clorox, and Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream, which is now a division of Nestle. So she's been a practitioner, she's been a software person, and she's been an analyst. She's basically done it all. And with that, I'll give it to Laura to please take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, and it's my honor to be here today. We do a quantitative survey monthly, and we publish all of our surveys openly, and our goal is that when people give to us to help the industry, we give back to them. And this survey was one of the toughest ones we've done in the last 5 years. Our goal was to understand the current state of direct materials and to understand where we are in building collaborative supplier relationships. And quite frankly, the results were so distressing to me that I called up my friends at ISM and said, how did we really get so off track in procurement that we're focused on transactional efficiency versus really looking at collaborative sourcing? So with that, I want to share the results, and these results are going to be shared with you, and you're welcome to share them openly. But when we look at business pain, in the supply chain world, the focus is on demand and supply volatility. People are struggling to get to data. They're struggling with supply chain visibility, cross-functional alignment, and risk management. Those are our top pain areas. Now, we also are struggling with the availability of people to do the job and business strategies and globalization and product quality and reliability. And then down at the bottom, you can see innovation. Now, most supply chain business strategies, when you open up the strategy, it'll say our goal is to grow. And if you look at global growth and you look at the period of 2013 to 2015, most companies have struggled. The growth rates of companies are 1%, negative 1%. It is not the 3 to 5% type of growth rates that we experienced in prior decades. And many people have gone global or built merger and acquisition activities to grow, but are struggling. And so product launch and the ability to drive innovation with suppliers is not really a pain level, but my question for people is, should it be? Should we be more aggressive in really driving our processes and our incentives so that we not only buy transactionally, but we can collaborate with first tier, second tier, and third tier suppliers to be able to drive higher levels of growth? When you think about, substantial innovation, it has not come from within the four walls. It's come through sourcing and building relationships. And most of the work that's happened in sourcing has been on indirect materials. So the work on RFQs and RFPs have fit very well into catalog-based systems for indirect materials, but the direct material world is still emerging and I think underserved. So as we continue with this, I want to make a case that I think collaborative workflow and rethinking sourcing practices is a missing link in the supply chain. I also will make the point that people are pretty happy with their systems today, and I don't think they should be. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to rethink these processes. So, Carrie, with that, if you can move the slides. Now, when we think about direct materials, when we think about our work with suppliers, and we also think about the fact that organizations have become larger, either through merger and acquisition or through globalization, we don't have just one hand reaching to a supplier. Instead, we have the need for collaborative workflow between procurement, engineering, or R&D teams and supply chain teams. And as this slide shows, the three teams are very highly involved in the buying process and also quality and manufacturing. Now, what we see is that procurement has become more global, more centralized, more focused on aggregate buying strategies, and many times manufacturing and quality teams are more regional. So the need for workflow and the need for things like visualization of drawings or the ability to answer questions about quality of design and quality of conformance become even more important. But it doesn't exist in the tools that most people have. Next slide. So the business pain for innovation and collaborative workflow in this study was much higher if the global purchasing teams had been centralized to buy globally and they were focused on commodity buying by commodity council. Now, if the organizations were more regional, there was less business pain around the need to rethink direct material sourcing and to move forward with collaborative applications. But to make the pivot to drive scale, most organizations are becoming more global or aggregates of regions to be able to leverage aggregate buying power. Next slide. Now, when we ask companies about their ability to make decisions, can they get to data to make decisions in purchasing today? We're pretty good at direct material cost reduction. That's what we've bought systems for. That's where our processes are focused. We also are pretty good for visibility, or we're good to manage the sourcing agreements or the bill of materials, transactional-based things, contract-based things. But when it comes to innovation, the ability to bring suppliers into the stream or process of innovation, or to speed new products on the stage gates for time for product launch, we struggle. We don't have the ability to really get to the data. And so you can see that our current applications are much more stacked for transactional efficiency on existing products than they are to be able to help us with sourcing decisions and collaborative workflow for new product launch. Next slide. So I'm going to show you a series of slides that are based upon gap analysis to make the argument that I think we have a significant opportunity to rethink direct material sourcing. In this slide, we ask companies that when they're looking at choosing a direct material supplier, how do they evaluate the suppliers? And the way to read this is the y-axis is the performance of the company, and the x-axis is the importance. And where we have a gap is where something is really important, but yet we're not performing. So you can see that the two areas where manufacturing companies in the discrete areas have the greatest gaps are in financial viability. Is this a reliable, financially viable supplier to be doing business with? And the second is an innovation workflow, the ability to ideate, to compare, to collaborate on parts and design and components to be able to bring those to market. We're performing well on price or reliability on delivery or manufacturing quality. We've got those pretty well nailed down, but these areas of financial viability and innovation are the opportunities. Next slide, Carrie. So when we look at what we have today in terms of technology, most people are pretty happy with what they have, and I don't think they should be. 44% of companies in the study think that what they have is pretty effective. We've been very focused on indirect material buying and transactional efficiency, and I think we've missed the need for collaborative workflow and supplier innovation. So I'm going to show you some slides that really expose this weakness. Next slide, Carrie. So we'll let it load there. There's a little bit of latency. So this is a slide that looks at the technologies. So when people look at the technologies they have and the performance of the technology and the importance of the technology, again, you can see that innovation, financial viability, quality, and design show up. So what this means is that our technologies have a gap there. And if you remember on the process side, we were doing better on manufacturing and quality. We really get there by brute force. But innovation and financial viability are both a gap on the process and the technology side. Next slide. So when we compare the two together of the performance of the company and the performance of the technology, again, what you see is that innovation rates pretty low. So the question is, how can we drive growth agendas if we can't collaborate with suppliers to really streamline new product launch? And how can we really drive this level of innovation and collaboration that we've always talked about in the industry if we cannot have technologies that allow collaborative sourcing? Should we be happy with only systems that allow us to drive transactional efficiency? And I think not. I think it's not just about reliability. I think it's not just about price or not just about lead times. I think that direct material sourcing is a very deep area and often is confused with indirect, which indirect to me is pretty straightforward, catalogs and buying of predetermined services. But where we're dealing with direct materials and innovation, I think there's a need for us to rethink technologies. Next slide. So these slides will be made available as well as our full study. And I appreciate you listening to us today. For more information, you can engage with us either on our LinkedIn platform, through SlideShare, through our website, and on my blog. But to me, as we look at this data, I think direct material sourcing is a missing link in the supply chain to enable growth, and I think there's a need to rethink technologies. Greg, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks, Laura. Appreciate that study. And again, as Laura mentioned, this will be the findings will be made available to everybody on this webinar in the near future. So, I'd like to talk about kind of building on what Laura spoke to here, really about how you can work more effectively with suppliers to build a competitive advantage, and talk about a shift that we've seen happening out there. So when we go out and talk to customers, and we only talk to discrete manufacturers who build highly engineered products, we go out and we see what's happening there in terms of product introduction, and it's really an unprecedented era of innovation and global connectivity. Products are evolving faster than ever before. Information is the new business currency. Everybody's connected, but people are not able to keep up with the amount of work that's coming at them in terms of new product launches and managing bills of material all the way through that launch process into production, and any resourcing and anything that's going on there. There's just an unprecedented level of activity and a lot of innovation happening that's driving that activity because things are revising over so much faster than before. And when we look at manufacturing business models, they've shifted all the way from vertical integration, and there's still some companies that are very focused on vertical integration, but they're more the exception than the rule. Everybody started outsourcing component manufacturing to sort of decapitalize their operations. But now today, because the suppliers have so much knowledge about new technologies that the consuming customer may not be familiar with, they're really reliant on the suppliers. So collaborative partnerships really represent the future of product innovation and the future of supply chains. And given that, suppliers are now becoming more important than ever. And the way that you perceive them and work with them has to change. And we're seeing this shift happening across all industries. It's widely acknowledged, that working, in partnership with suppliers and as partners, as contributors of innovation, have real benefits. They can bring that innovation to the table. You get them involved earlier. You can launch products faster. You can launch products at the right cost structure. You're not baking in the cost to one supplier. And it's very clear that people are trying to increase the level of collaboration that they have and work jointly together with their suppliers more so than ever before. And it's not just happening in any one manufacturing industry, it's happening across all industries. Everybody's feeling the same sort of pressure and making the same moves to partner with suppliers. So when a big shift like this happens out there, as with any shift, there's winners and there's losers. And the winners are the people that adapt with the times. So we're seeing the best companies say, hey, we do need to work with our suppliers, and we do need to reimagine the way we go to market and reimagine our products. There's also losers. And these statistics still blow me away to think that in 16 years, 52% of the Fortune 500 have disappeared. And when you start to look at who the top market cap companies are now, they're technology companies more so than they are the traditional manufacturers and big industrial companies. So the world's really shifting, and whenever there's a shift like that, there are winners and losers. So in that world, when we look at who's surviving, we can take a look at a couple example companies here. General Electric has been, part of the Fortune 500 probably since it was started, right? And they've always been one to adapt with the times, as big as they are. And they recently created a new company about a year ago called Current to help companies redefine the way they use energy. Current is building an ecosystem of supplier partners to provide valuable add-ons to the intelligent infrastructure that GE provides in terms of lighting products and industrial controls. So some of their suppliers in this venture include Intel and Qualcomm, who can provide technologies that they don't have themselves. So they're partnering with these suppliers to deliver a more comprehensive service to their customers around energy efficiency. Another well-known brand is Ford. About a year ago also, Ford launched a new venture called Ford Smart Mobility. And that company's charter is to design and build mobility services, not just in cars, but also in bicycles and buses, any kind of transportation. And they're doing it on their own, but also in collaboration with startups and tech companies who can provide capabilities outside of Ford's primary domain expertise. So they're partnering to develop these mobility solutions. And then there's new disruptors, too, who are coming into the market and rethinking things. One of my favorite ones is SpaceX with the reusable rockets, right? Another Elon Musk company. And despite the fact that Elon Musk is pretty hell-bent on vertical integration, we know that because we try to call on all his companies, they still rely on almost 3,000 suppliers to build their rockets. And to get to Mars, he's going to need to rely on suppliers who bring capabilities to SpaceX that they don't have in-house and don't plan to build in-house. And disruption is especially prevalent in smaller companies. There's a company called Four Moms. We're based in Pittsburgh. They're also a Pittsburgh company. They're reimagining the baby products industry through the use of advanced robotics technology and cheap electronics. So they collaborate with their suppliers to reinvent everything from strollers to car seats. And they're adding these electronics and robotics to these and creating a real premium product for which they get a premium price. So even something as old and traditional as a stroller can be reinvented given today's new technology, but they have to work with suppliers who have the expertise to reinvent these products. So when you look across those companies, right, Ford, GE, Four Moms, SpaceX, and you say, what's the common thread across them? The common thread is that they embrace supplier collaboration to create a competitive advantage and win in the market. So they're working faster, they're doing their cycles on product innovation are faster. They're getting to market faster. They're driving greater profitability by coming out with premium products. And the way they're doing it is abandoning traditional siloed approaches to work more effectively across the stakeholder functions. So this isn't just with suppliers, it's internally. Engineering can't just throw things over the wall to procurement after they've spec'd in that supplier that can't be replaced, right? So these teams need to work together and sort of surround themselves around the products and then reach out to their extended enterprise of supply partners to help drive innovation and develop, launch, and deliver more profitable products. And it's working across these functions. We had one of our customers speak recently, and they have their quality people using a solution that we've co-developed with them, and they said, we're getting a side benefit of quality and purchasing being in the same system because quality can see the purchasing pipeline and know what's coming at them. Purchasing can look and see how suppliers are doing as they go through the APQP process and what their performance looks like there. So they're getting the benefits of working using a unified system to work together and collaborating that way. So when you look at what this means for procurement or purchasing or whatever you call it at your company, it's really changing everything, right? You're moving from just being the procurement function to being the supplier engagement function. And it's more than just a quoting being an activity. It's collaborating and bringing together stakeholders internally as well as your suppliers to work on important initiatives. You move from being a cost cutter to being a very enterprise value contributor. It's all about driving business value rather than having the traditional role of savings. So this outreach to suppliers, bringing them in, really is changing the way that procurement's looking at their jobs and their roles in the corporation. Now, to accomplish this, and I'm going to tie this back to Laura, what Laura found out there in her survey, it takes a different approach than how things are being done today. And it's really not possible with traditional solutions. This is about driving breakthrough innovation. It's about doing things faster. It's about collaborating, not just chucking things from silo to silo. It's about real enterprise solutions rather than using a bunch of spreadsheets and SharePoint and email to try to run your business. The most important spend you have, the most critical spend you have is your product spend, and you need to really professionally manage that and professionally manage the supplier relationships. You need to eliminate those islands of data and create powerful analytics from the data that you have by putting it into an enterprise system where you can make use of it. You need to eliminate ambiguity and create visibility for everybody who's involved so they know what to do and when to do it. and they know what's happening. And it's about moving from where you have limited supplier knowledge and having arm's length relationships with your suppliers to moving to where you have deep supplier insight. And that is exactly why we built DirectWorks, to enable better supplier engagement, better sharing of data, better collaboration so that you can experience greater product success. Next Tier Automotive chose DirectWorks because of our deliberate focus on highly engineered product manufacturers. We don't sell our solution to anybody but highly engineered product manufacturers, and we think that the direct materials spend has been woefully underserved by solutions that are out there selling to everybody. One size does not fit all, and that's something that NextTier saw, and that's why they licensed DirectWorks, and that's why they've worked with us as a great customer of ours. Spend Matters has also recognized DirectWorks for the unique supplier engagement capabilities that we provide with our solutions. We've been about collaboration from the word go because we know how these people need to work together to bring products to market. It's not transactional. You need to be able to share rich technical information. You need to look at total landed cost in a very detailed way. You need to work with the supplier to drive innovation. You need to work with the supplier to hit the target cost for your bills of materials. And we understand what that takes, and that's what we built this for. So that's a bit about us. We were not too surprised at some of Laura's research because we've been kind of running into that out there in the market, and it's something that we think that people want to talk about and need to talk about. So we're going to go into the Q&A portion of the webinar at this point, but I did want to put this slide up. Anybody in the greater Chicagoland area, or if you're just looking to take a trip to Chicago for some Christmas shopping, on Friday, December 9th, we're going to have a breakfast briefing there. There'll be breakfast and a panel discussion. Laura Cesario will be on that panel. We also have a couple industrial manufacturers, Generac Power Systems, CNH Industrial will be on that panel as well. And I'll be moderating that panel. We're inviting highly engineered product manufacturers from the greater Chicagoland area and anywhere else in to come to that event. If you're interested in learning more, please contact sales@directworks.com to register. We think it's going to be a real interesting discussion that day. So now we'll open it up to Q&A.
Okay, we have a few questions fielded out there, so I'll give this to both Greg and Laura and see who wants to take it. So why do you believe people are not familiar with alternative solutions for promoting supplier-enabled innovation?
Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think they've evolved recently, and I think that many people have been so focused on ERP type of investments that they haven't really stopped to think that maybe there's a better way to do collaborative workflow with suppliers. So I think companies like DirectWorks are on a missionary sell to basically build the business case and educate the market. It definitely is not mainstream if you use the Jeffrey Moore crossing the chasm. So it requires education and a missionary sell approach.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, a lot of people went out and invested in systems, and the systems for Indirect are very good systems, and, they're getting better. And I think there's even new entrants going into those markets now for the sort of source to pay on the indirect side. But when you go out to talk to a company, and we go out and talk with companies and say, well, if you have a system, what are you using for direct, or are you using that system for direct? And in very many cases, they're not using it for direct materials, which is quite ironic when you look at, up to 70% of the third-party spend for those direct materials is for direct materials versus the indirect, sort of solving the problem of compliance and directed buying for people. We're really working on operating expenses more than they're working on the profitability of their products. So it is a missionary sale. I can attest to that. But we are starting to see people take an interest in purpose-built solutions and really start to segment their spend and say, wait a minute, I can't use a one-size-fits-all solution for my spend. So now I think we're moving into the next phase of maturity and solutions there.
Next question. What technologies are most people using for direct material sourcing and supplier management?
I can take that, and if Laura wants to add any color. What we see the most is, even if they have an indirect solution, very often if we go to the folks in the P&L who have direct materials, the most popular solution is Microsoft Excel. And there's some really, really good spreadsheets, and there's really great MPV calculations and very detailed cost breakdowns, but they're still spreadsheets, and they're super inefficient, and distributing those through email and having to get those back and sort of run what we call the spreadsheet Olympics is really not a good use of people's time when this much activity is going on. So, but that's the way they're doing it because they don't really have an alternative, and a lot of times they have to justify an investment in a solution like ours or another direct materials focused solution, and sometimes that's difficult to put more cost into a cost center. But really, when you start to look at the benefits you can achieve with that type of a solution investment, it's not that hard to realize a really quick ROI on it, and sort of move away from those spreadsheets, move off those islands of data, move off one person having everything on their laptop to have it in a system where you can then use that data to start to look at what should things cost and what is our cost history on certain cohorts of parts and whatnot, and how often has that supplier quoted, and are they competitive. So you start to build a more centralized database of really good information that you can use in many different ways in your business. There's a lot of side benefits that come out of it that aren't even anticipated when they start to use a solution that's an enterprise solution. Anything to add there, Laura?
I'm just getting off mute. Well, I think the other thing is that 10 years ago, we were more regional in supply chains. The global nature and the aggregation of procurement, I think, makes these workflows even more important. And also, we are now able to be more digital as we think about the digital supply chain and the sharing of drawings and the ability to rotate drawings and insert parts in CAD/CAM systems and be able to translate that information. I think those two drivers increase the need and kind of highlight the gap. Back when we were regional supply chains, we could run down the street with drawings under our arms and go talk to a regional supplier. And if we had a part issue, we could call them up on the phone and they could come to our plant and they could look at it. But, with global procurement and regional manufacturing and the increase in CAD/CAM kind of systems and the digital supply chain, I think all are drivers.
Yeah, you just spurred a thought there, Laura. When we look at that silo slide earlier where engineering and procurement and quality and everyone's working in their own silos, they tend to also have systems to operate those silos. So they've got their own operating system within their business silo. And it's sort of like, well, we can't have engineering go into any sort of a purchasing system, right? And it doesn't make any sense to us, because you think of a system like email that's used for communication across a company, or people use Slack. They're all different roles and functions going into a common system because they're collaborating and communicating. And we said, we can integrate these systems as much as possible and bring the data from other systems into our system. For instance, if you need to pick up information from the quality system because you want to know how a supplier has been performing. But people just start to think, working together in a system in this collaborative way is okay. It's all right to come in there and answer questions, and we try to make it as easy as possible for people to do that with unlimited user licensing and whatnot, because we think independent of your role, you need to work together, and there's a lot of people that have to engage suppliers and answer questions and share technical data and answer questions about that technical data. And that's something that we've tried to overcome by saying, hey, anybody can use this system. We're not just going to limit it to a certain number of seats or a certain functional group or a certain silo within your company. So.
Okay, and last question. Manufacturing quality was rated as the most important supplier consideration, but the most valuable technology was underperforming there. How do you solve that problem?
Well, I think that the technologies that we're talking about with DirectWorks have great implication there. I think the devil's in the details, and unless we can collaborate on the details, we can't solve those problems. That's my perspective. Greg, yours?
Yeah, I think it's very important as you try to understand more about the suppliers that if they're looking at your survey and saying, okay, I'm thinking about a purchasing system and there's not much quality data in there, well, how can you get quality data into that system? And you can do that through an integration and bring over any performance. So if they're working with you today and you've got information on their performance, such as beyond quality, even on-time delivery, fill rates, anything that you're tracking and measuring them on, why wouldn't you want to put that into a system so that you understand their performance, so when you're going to make a recommendation to go with a particular supplier, you're not recommending somebody that might be on quality hold, right? You need to know that. You need to understand that. And we're starting to build more solutions around sort of the most important business processes to engage suppliers. So we've got an EAPQP solution we co-developed with a customer. It's generally, we refer to it as supplier parts qualification. But now quality people are going in post-sourcing and taking those suppliers through the APQP process toward a launch. And by having this quality fix in there, that data now about a supplier's performance as they take them through PPAP and many of the other steps, that data is starting to get captured. So they're learning more about their suppliers. They're having that in the system. And it's really what it's all about, right? Make a business process as efficient as possible through automation and put the right data in front of the users at the right time so they can make a better business decision. That's really the crux of what we're trying to do, is take all those processes that already exist out there, and we don't ever do anything to harm the integrity of those processes. We're not saying drop them. We're saying just make them as efficient as possible and add data to those processes at the right time in a very, very streamlined way so that people can make better decisions. And that's what we're really working with as we go to expand our product set.
Great, thank you. On that note, that ends this broadcast. Just want everybody to know that this link will be available for replay within the next 24 hours. And thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Laura, for taking charge of this and for the study and the results.
Great.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.